Welcome to Center Cup. This is episode 36. We're going to do an Aronimink deep dive. It is just me today. This is Will. If you're watching on video, you can probably see that. But if you're just listening, it is just going to be me. I'm going to try to save my own voice here and not talk for, an hour and a half. I'm going to try to keep this around 60 minutes, which I'm not off to a great start here. But I do, PGA Championship around the corner, second major of the year. I'm not going to dive into any recent news, anything like that. We're just going to go right into Aronimink, obviously the host of the 2026 PGA Championship. And again, I'm going to do my best here. I'm working behind the scenes on some of these graphics that you're going to see pop up shortly too. So please cut me a little slack here. I'm going to do my best, and we've got it all pretty set up. I'm excited to walk through this. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the general history, talk about a couple of the significant events that have gone on at Aronimink, since it opened up and starting in 1962 at a PGA Championship back then. And then we're going to go hole by hole. We're going to try not to spend a ton of time on each hole. Obviously, 18 holes. I'm going to try to, mainly talk about my favorites and kind of breeze through a couple of the less remarkable ones, maybe. But with that, why don't we jump right into some of the history here? Obviously, the course Aronimink is one of the oldest courses in the U.S. I'm sure you've heard that plenty this week. You will hear it a lot more from us included next week. But it began in 1896, like on a street corner in Philadelphia. Obviously, street corners looked a lot different in 1896 than they do in big cities. In 2026, that would be 130 years ago. At that time, it was just an offshoot of the Belmont Cricket Club, and it was originally the Belmont Golf Association. And then reincorporated in 1900 as the Aronimink Golf Club. And it was one of those things where, originally it was just a few holes pretty crudely laid out by some dudes who just love to play cricket. By 1897, though, they joined with a couple other cricket clubs and formed a golf association of their own. And they had 9 holes to play on 52nd Street. Again, obviously very different than what 52nd Street looks like in Philadelphia now. But they bounced around a good bit. They moved to Newtown Square in 1926. That's where they are now still. They purchased 300 acres there, relocated to the clubhouse they are still in, which was completed in 1928. I believe that is the most recent. I'm sure they've made some updates, but it is still, that original clubhouse. And it was Donald Ross that laid out the 18 holes at Aronimink in 1926 after they purchased those 300 acres. And, looking back at some of this history stuff is makes me really want to do a little bit more of a deep dive on some of this stuff, because I was looking into Donald Ross, obviously, for this. And at this point, he's a Scottish immigrant, came to the U.S., and he's building these courses, designing these courses in the U.S. And his resume at this point, even in 1926, when he built Aronimink, he had built Pinehurst No. 2, 1907, Eastlake, 1913, Oakland Hills South in 1918, Inverness Club in 1919, Oak Hill East in 1921, and there's a lot more to add to that list. And then obviously Aronimink, which he completed in 1928, a couple years later, and then Seminole came right after Aronimink. It's gone through a bunch of changes, obviously, since 1928 when Ross's design opened up, but for the most part, they've tried to keep things fairly similar, true to his Scottish roots. You'll see a lot of elevation changes, some up and down. Nothing huge, only a couple a couple holes with significant elevation change, but good subtle elevation changes. A lot of crowned greens, and we'll talk about it a little bit as we get into the holes. But a lot of par fours, a lot of long, grueling par fours. Obviously, par fours aren't that long in 2026 anymore, kind of at all. They used to be long. There's a lot of 430 to 490 yard par fours, which we'll call long for this the intents and purposes here. But whatever, it'll be interesting to see how it plays. First time we've seen it since 2018, and obviously the game has changed a lot since then. And speaking of, we can talk through a couple of the significant events. There have been a handful, nothing crazy. One of the, in terms of the major championship venues we see these days, there are not many that have a shorter resume than Aronimink at this point, to be honest, in terms of PGA hosted events. It did host the 1962 PGA Championship. That is the only men's PGA Tour major that they have hosted. And Gary Player did win that one for a whopping $13,000, which 1962 was a while ago, not that long ago. $13,000 for a major championship. Obviously, the golf world looked a lot different in 1962 than it does now, but still. And actually, it was Jack Nicklaus who changed. I would go on to change what the golf world looked like. But he was just 22 at the time and finished 2 shots back, I believe. And it was his first full year on the PGA Tour. He had just won his first major a few months before, and this was his first PGA Championship ever. Obviously, ends up finishing a couple shots off the lead here and knocking off another major championship. It was Bob Golby ended up the runner-up, by the way, 1 shot back, in case you were curious. But yeah, $13,000 winner's prize for Gary Player. I'm not sure what the entire purse was. Couldn't have been more than, 13,000 is going to the winner. It couldn't be more than, 40 grand or something like that, distributed among everybody, if that. But at this point, this was the PGA being played in late July, and there have been a lot of conversations looking towards 2027, et cetera, about the current PGA schedule, but it was a lot less chaotic than it was in 1962. I can tell you that much, because it fell 1 week after the Open Championship. We went straight from the Open Championship at Royal Troon to the PGA Championship at Aronimink in Pennsylvania. So we were pond hopping a little bit for sure. But yeah, it was at Royal Troon, the Open Championship the week before. And it was the first of 5 times. I guess that happened 5 times that the 2 majors were played in back-to-back weeks, which I'm glad we avoid that now. You're getting a lot of complaints right now about the 2 signature events leading directly into the major championship here. So I'm glad that we're avoiding the back-to-back major championships. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm glad that's not a thing. But then, they took a good 15-year hiatus here before the 1977 USAM, which John Fout won. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. John Fout defeated Doug Fischer 9-8, which is pretty brutal. That's the largest margin since, nobody's lost by more than 9 since that 1977 USAM. Like I said, defeated Doug Fischer. Not a crazy career path to follow here for John Fout. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. I do want to get to the hole-by-hole stuff for Aronimink. 1 top 10 at a major, 1 solo 5th. I believe he had 2 wins in back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour. Those were his only 2 wins in his career. We can move on, though, to the 2003 Senior PGA Championship and spend very little time on it. John Jacobs beats Bobby Watkins by 2 strokes. This was the second time after this is the second time Bobby Watkins comes up, because he's one of the guys who lost by 1 shot to John Fout in his PGA Tour career. But then we move on to the 2 PGA Tour events that they've held. They've held 3. So 2010 and 2011 AT&T National, and then the 2018 BMW. And it is funny looking back at 2010 and 2011. And this was a similar thing that I saw when we were going back to Trump National Doral. We were looking back at 2016 as the most recent time that we played at Doral on the PGA Tour. Obviously, Liv had been there more recently, whatever. But you were still seeing so many of the same names pop up. It was so much Justin Rose. Obviously, Adam Scott had won at Doral. And even going back to 2010 and 2011 for this, for the AT&T National, Justin Rose won this thing in 2010. It was his second win on the PGA Tour. And that's just another testament to the longevity of the guys that we see on the PGA Tour these days, because, Justin Rose, he's 45 now. He must have been, this was 16 years ago. Mid-late, I guess, 2010, but he's still doing it to this day. But obviously, this was his second win on the PGA Tour in 2010 at the AT&T National at Aronimink. He had only won for the first time a couple weeks earlier at the Memorial. But there's a lot of other names that pop up, like Jason Day was in that top 10 as well. And then in 2011, kind of similarly, Nick Watney is the one who wins, but then you have Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, Kevin Na, Tommy Fleetwood all inside the top 10. Ricky Fowler ended up in a tie for first place after, I believe, the 3rd round, because he was only 22 years old at the time. He hadn't won on the PGA Tour, wouldn't win for another year. But it really does just go to show how long these guys have been around. Ricky Fowler, I was just watching a couple seconds ago at the Truist Championship, put together, I believe, a 60. I think he's at 7 under now after making a big par putt on the 18th there. Ricky's still doing it. It's really impressive just looking back to look back at 2010 and 2011 and see that, half of the top 10 is still guys that are playing. It shows how incredibly talented the youth was at that point, and how incredibly talented they continue to be this late into their career. Then most recently on the PGA Tour, at least, was the 2018 BMW Championship that Keegan Bradley won. And this was one of the more interesting things I saw about this. Was I was looking at course record, right? Because I believe it was Nick Watney had a 62 on Saturday in 2011, and that was the sole course record at that time. And it mentioned when I was researching it that Tommy Fleetwood had 2 62s to tie that course record. He'd done it twice, and he did do it twice at the 2018 BMW, and still didn't really even give himself a shot to win. It ended up with Keegan Bradley and Justin Rose in a playoff. Keegan went 66, 64, 66, 64. Pretty ridiculous stuff. As you'll see when we go through the scorecard, this is a par 70, so take that with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, a course record 62 twice for Tommy Fleetwood there. Xander Schauffele, another guy that finished 1 stroke out. Billy Horschel finished 1 shot out. Rory McIlroy was 2 out of that playoff. So a lot of these guys that we're talking about as some of the best players in the world, Xander Schauffele and Rory McIlroy, Justin Rose specifically, those 3, Tommy Fleetwood, another one, have had a lot of success at Aronimink, even though we haven't really been there for quite some time. So maybe we'll have a little bit of a fight among them and the top of the world with the Scotty Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Cam Young, Rory McIlroy side of things. And then the last one that we will talk about here is the 2020 KPMG Women's PGA that they hosted. Se-Young Kim won that one. This was mid-COVID. It was in like October, so I don't want to spend a ton of time here. But she did shoot a Sunday 63 to win by 5. And with that, I think we're in pretty good shape to get to the hole by hole here. So I'm gonna again try to focus myself, because I do tend to ramble. And there are 18 holes to get through, and I'm going to try to do this fairly straightforward and not spend 10 minutes on any one hole, and really talk mostly about the holes I like the most. But we're going to jump to that quickly. I think hopefully if you're watching on YouTube, which is probably the best way to watch this one, I do have a bunch of stuff that I'm going to, or YouTube or Twitter, I guess. I'm going to have a bunch of stuff over on the side here to go click through as we go hole by hole. What's up right now is just a course map, nice little artistic thing. You can also see like Belmont Cricket Club and some of the names that they were incorporated under before they moved in 1926 to the current grounds they are on in Newtown Square. So this is just a good, visualization of the course. And the one thing I think you'll notice is the lack of water. We'll flip through it. There's only really like 1, maybe 2 holes that water really is a factor on. I think it technically is there, and 3 or 4. But we're talking 1 or 2 holes that it actually could play a factor. Luckily, one of those holes is coming down the stretch. I believe it's 17, the par 3, but we're a ways from that. I don't need to jump to that quite yet. But we can talk a little bit about the scorecard, although I will really just talk about this as we go through the holes. This is, just a good visualization. You'll see up top each hole is named after a Native American tribe. And yeah, it's like I said, par 70. It is playing 7,400 yards roughly this year, 7,394 technically, if you want to, get real down to it there with the details. And you don't hit a par 5 until the 9th hole, which is kind of weird. Opens with 4 par 4s on both the front and back 9. There are a couple very slight changes to length from 2018 from the BMW. We'll get into those. There's nothing crazy realistically, so I say we just jump into the first hole here. And yeah, like you can see on the screen here, we're going to be talking a little bit about these holes. So one, I'm not going to talk a ton about one. It's not really my favorite hole, to be honest with you. It's a nice hole. It's a good hole. It's a good opener. I'm not a huge fan of like putting your most difficult hole first, to be honest with you. I don't necessarily think I tend to be a big fan of par 5 openers, to be honest with you, but this is a good par 4 opener as well. Like I said, 4 consecutive par 4s to open, and you can see the yardage if you're looking on YouTube on the right-hand side here. I've got the hole, the name, the par, and the yardage here with a couple, bullets, and we'll switch hole by hole here. But as you can see, the yardage is 434, and if you look at the first 4 holes here, all par 4s, we go 434, 413, 455, and 457. There's obviously a little bit of difference between these holes. I'm not a huge, I don't love opening with 4 400-yard par 4s, especially when there's not a ton of variability here, but there is some variability. We'll get to holes 3 and 4. I have a little bit of a gripe with that, but We won't get too far ahead of out over our skis here, I guess. But yeah, this is the first of 4 consecutive par fours. It's a slightly downhill tee shot, and you can see the overview if you're watching on YouTube or X. But I'll talk through it a little bit. It's basically it's a dead straightaway hole, and one of the things you'll notice as we go through this like really consistently is all these little tiny bunkers that jut into the fairways. This is actually like about as few bunkers as you'll see on a hole, but like barring a couple. And another trend that you'll see a lot is these bunkers guarding the front of the greens, like, just kind of in the neck on the right and left of the greens. There's still a little bit of space to run up, but with the elevation changes, there's not much opportunity to do that aside from a couple holes. But yeah, just keep an eye out for those like fairway bunkers that jut out into the fairway, but instead of it being one big bunker, it's going to be like 4 or 5 tiny bunkers. And then with the bunkers on the front left and right side of the green, there is another trend you'll see. But you tee off downhill. It's a pretty good downhill into the fairway. And one thing that I do like that they do about this hole is the camber, slightly right to left. Like if you're a righty and you're in the fairway, the ball's going to be slightly above your feet. It's one of the things that makes Augusta really special. I'm not at all comparing Aronimink to Augusta. Keegan Bradley won this thing at 20 under in 2018. I would not be surprised if we saw something similar this year, to be honest, which is an unfortunate trend about the PGA Championship that we can talk about another day. But this is a hole that has a nice little right to left slant. Obviously, you see those bunkers guarding the right side of the fairway. So you really want to be playing out, and you want to kind of put it up just short of those bunkers. It's not the longest hole in the world, especially in modern golf. So you can kind of put it short of those bunkers, let the fairway take it down a little bit to the left, and you should be fine. It was the 12th hardest hole at the 2018 BMW. And yeah, it's a big old green. You'll see some runoff areas. The one thing I do kind of like is there's runoff areas in really interesting parts of these greens. So you'll see if you're looking on YouTube or X or whatever, or I'll talk through it. The green it's a long green, but in the back left of the green, there's this like weird tongue extension runoff area. And that works really well when you've got the fairway with the right to left camber, because with the balls above your feet, it's going to induce a draw, right? And so you'll have a little bit more right to left spin, and it'll be going long left a lot of the time. So it's just an area where, a lot of shots will end up in that collection area because of the camber of the fairway, because of that slant right to left. And the one thing I will say that I didn't mention when I was talking about Donald Ross and his Scottish roots and how that like is personified in this course is you'll see a lot of like native area stuff, like not right next to the green, and the way like it's not, a US Open, right, where the rough is going to be grown up, where it's essentially a native area. You're going to see, 10 yards off the green, there'll be a native area, stuff like that. You'll see it on 18 and throughout this course. It'll go, fairway, intermediate, rough, native area. And the native stuff is no joke. If you get in there, it is definitely penalizing. So, but yeah, it's a good first hole. Again, not, anything that I find remarkable, but it is a good first hole. And we can move on to the second, which you'll see here, another right to left. But this one is actually really interesting. It reminds me of, this might be something that nobody can relate to, and I don't know who's played what, but there's a hole at Bethpage Black. I forget if it's like 6 or maybe 7 or 8, but it's a dogleg right that goes down the hill. And when you're standing on the tee box, all you see is a fairway, like a little bit of a fairway, and then bunkers to the left of it. And if you look at the tee shot at this hole as well, it's the exact same thing. You just see the bunkers, you just see the fairway angled out to your right, and what you actually have to do is go over the fairway. But the one thing I do like about this hole, and they do it on the first 2 holes, is again, the fairway is heavily slanted. This one even more so than the first. It's at this time it's left to right, so it's a dogleg left, and you're trying to hit a drive that lands over those bunkers. But then because of that camber of the fairway, it'll almost certainly, if for these big hitters, unless you shape it really well, will kick through the fairway, especially if depends how much the fairway is shaved down, whatever, will kick through the fairway into that rough there. It's not a long hole though, only 413. So especially with the distance these guys hit it, it's not going to be the most penalizing thing in the world. You're going to have a wedge in out of the rough. But again, you can see on that green, there's another massive runoff area behind it in this like weird little tongue swale thing that can really funnel a ton of balls. You'll see a lot of runoff areas in the front and back of these greens. It'll really funnel a lot of balls back there. Once again, I mean, you have, instead of huge bunkers, you've got two sets of three little ones on the left side, and then two bunkers guarding both the right and left side of the green. This will be a trend. It'll be till like hole 4 or 5 or 6 or something that we really see anything different than that in terms of the bunkers in front of the green. But this is another really nice hole. Did I miss anything here? It was the third easiest at the BMW. That's just a lot of that has to do with the length, to be honest. It is not the most challenging hole, even though the fairway might kick your ball into the rough. It's because it's so short. That's not that big a deal for these guys, to be honest with you. But we can jump to hole number 3 here. I mean, yeah, we're already looking at that 20 minutes in. That's some good work here. But we're going to try to focus a lot on some of the more interesting holes, and this is definitely one of them. The one thing I will say that I don't like that happens at Aronimink sometimes is if you're watching on video, you can see what I'm talking about, but I'll describe it. There's a couple times where there are bunkers that jut into the fairway in like the first 20 yards of the fairway that are not at all like in play. Obviously, especially not for a PGA Tour event, but for anybody teeing off from the proper distance, they're not at all in play. And I don't really understand the purpose of them. I think, my opinion around those has been something that, related to a renovation at a course I saw recently, where a lot of bunkers were taken out because they were overly penalizing, in that if you already hit a bad shot, like, I don't need to be in that bunker, and none of these professionals are going to be in that bunker, by the way. This is like a totally personal golf opinion. But if I'm hitting a drive bad enough to be in that bunker, trust me, I don't need to be in the bunker. It's fine. But that's an aside here. But again, you have 3, if you count that first one, you have 4 different sets of bunkers that jut into the fairway here. That's just one bunker, but then there's a set of 2, a set of 3, another set of 3 small bunkers that all kind of jut into the fairway at staggered levels. This is another one. It has 12 bunkers, and that is not the most we'll see today by a long shot. But it is the 3rd straight hole, like I said, with bunkers guarding the front, left, and right side of the green there. Again, it's just a thing you see a lot at Aronimink. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I like a little bit more variability sometimes, but, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you were to draw up a hole that is the average hole at Aronimink, it is a hole that is fairly straight away, maybe a little bit of camber in the fairway, and 2 to 3 sets of fairway bunkers jutting in, and those 2 bunkers right in the front of the green there. But this is a fun, you can test, see how far you want to try to push it up there. It's only 455, which for these guys, they can hit a 320-yard drive and make it a wedge in. But that does bring in that second set of fairway bunkers into play. So it's really kind of a pick your poison type of thing. There's a lot of room to lay up if you probably, I don't know the distances exactly, but that's probably around like a 5 wood for these guys, a 3 wood or something, to lay into that, sweet spot there between the sets of fairway bunkers. But it was the 8th hardest hole at the BMW in 2018. So no slouch, but nothing too crazy. This one is titled Navajo. I wonder if there's like particular reasoning behind how they assigned the names of these courses. I didn't see these holes. I didn't see anything, but anyways, yeah, this is one of the more interesting ones just because of the bunkers, which are bizarre and intense. But it is one of the things I guess I should say, and you won't see that even if you're watching a video from this perspective, the bird's eye view of the hole. But when you're on, there was some tee shots that you can see like from the tee, and you really can't see the bunkers, which I did think was quite cool. They're because they're sunken into the ground, they're not risen at all. You can see sort of this. You can see the lip, but from the tee box, it just looks like a rise in the grass. You don't actually see the bunker. So it's a little bit of a depth perception thing. Some of that pops up again and again, and on some of these holes, just because it is a pretty flat course, like there's slight elevation changes, but there's also a lot of pretty flat holes, especially near the back 9, that some of that depth perception stuff can come into play when you're talking about the bunkering here and the elevation changes. So that'll be interesting to see. I mean, these guys are so good at golf and have such good caddies that I don't think that's a real factor for them. But that was something I noticed that I think would, catch my eye if I was out there playing golf on a random Wednesday, which I'm not. But maybe one day I'll get out to Aronimink somehow. But we can move on to Seminole, which is the 4th hole. And it is, this was one of the things that I think I don't love about a couple of these courses. Like if you flip between, And if you're watching a video, you'll see me flip between them a couple times here. But hole 3 and hole 4, they're very different, but they're also not that different. And I think they're very different for like average golfers like me. But for professional golfers, I just don't think they play that different. Once again, you have a couple different sets of bunkers jutting into the fairway. It's literally 2 yards different. It's another par 4, 457 yards compared to the 455-yard par 4 we just went through. And it's really not particularly different. I mean, again, there's slight differences. You have only 2 sets of bunkers jutting into the fairway anywhere near a particular landing zone. This is the first time you only have 1 bunker guarding the front of the green. There is only 1 on the right side of the green there. The tee shot plays a little bit uphill. Once again, you can't really see the landing area particularly well of your tee ball. And then the green features, a couple tiers. These greens are quite interesting, especially if you incorporate the runoffs into like green complex type conversation. But I don't love that these are back to back, to be honest. I think that's nitpicking a little bit, but to follow up a pretty straightaway 455-yard par 4 with a pretty straightaway 457-yard par 4, where once again, just in terms of strategy, maybe it's more exaggerated on hole 3, which I just popped up onto the screen, but you want to play it out to the right side of the fairway, and then you want to hit a good approach in. The green complex is different, but they both kind of have this like left to right sort of angle. It was this, and this was the 7th hardest hole at the 2018 BMW. So it really, scoring wise, wasn't that different as well, which is a little bit of a shame. I mean, it's a good golf hole. They both are good golf holes. I think putting them back to back takes, I don't know the right way to say it, but it makes them less individual, which I think is a bummer. I think you want each golf hole to stand out, right? Like, I guess that's how I would put it. I think when you walk off of a golf course that you just played or a golf course that you watch, right? Like that's one of the ththings about the Masters. Like, every hole at the Masters, which hole is where the fairway does this, which, the par 4s are all differentiated, everything like that. To have 3 and 4 back to back is kind of one of those things where even playing it, if you walk off that course and you're trying to walk it through in your head, like hole by hole, you might be like, well, that was that hole 3, was that hole 4? Just similar visuals, similar structure, but neither hole is a bad hole in and of itself. It's just the putting them back to back like that can kind of, take down the quality of both of them individually at the same time, or maybe some of the parts is whatever it is, the opposite of that expression, I guess. Not some of the parts is greater than the whole. They're both just they take away from the combination, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But we can move on to hole 5 after mumbling through that. This is our first par 3. If you're watching a video, I tried to put a little screenshot of the green up here. I think it's too small. You probably can't tell. It is crazy undulated. A lot of these par 3s will have a similar theme too, where you'll see big old greens, huge greens with lots of undulation, where, doing this safe play and hitting to the middle of the green is going to be a tough 2-putt. And then, if the pin's tucked somewhere and you try to get after it and put it into a bunker, that can also be pretty tough. But this is another one. It's just guarded by a ton of bunkers. I mean, if you're watching on video, it is literally like the green is essentially a circle. It's not, but it's essentially a circle. And the bottom 2/3 of it are completely surrounded by bunkering on all sides. It's really just the back third that isn't protected by a bunker. There's like a tiny bunker back right that actually juts. It's part of a bunker complex on a separate hole, but whatever. That's not that important. But the point is, this is a pretty standard one. It's only 171 yards. I guess I should say that off the bat. I keep forgetting to say the yards. 171 yards on this par 3. Not at all a long shot. I think this says extended 2 yards. It was extended 12 yards. It played 159 yards in 2018 on the scorecard. Obviously, it'll vary day to day depending on pin position. But 171 today, which for these guys is a 9-iron or an 8-iron. I think it plays slightly downhill. There's a couple of spots on this hole where the pin can be in a funnel, which could make it really easy. But at the same time, there are also a handful of spots where the hole certainly does not play in a funnel, and it can be a very difficult 2-putt for sure. But moving on to, and this one's called Mohawk, which is actually a ski mountain in Connecticut that I used to ski at. It's like 300 feet tall. Mountain is really an excessive word. So that's really important. I'm glad you all know that about me now. But it's the first par 3, the first not par 4 of the entire golf course. So, a nice little change of pace there before we jump back into a couple more par fours here. Starting with hole 6, and this one I do like a lot, actually. This is another one where from the tee, you can't really see. It's uphill, but it's cambered to the right. So you kind of have to have a good sense of splitting those two fairway bunkers, because if you're looking at it from the box, they kind of look like they stack up. You can see a little bit of fairway between them, to be fair. But just knowing the depth perception between the first set of fairway bunkers and the second. So it's a big dogleg right. And on the dogleg, like on the elbow of that, there's a set of 4 little bunkers that jut out into the fairway. And then straight on the tee line through the fairway, there's another set of 3 bunkers there that skirt the left side of the fairway. And it's a good green complex. This is actually one that you don't need to. It's a 402-yard par 3. These guys aren't worried about that, but you could theoretically. It's more open in the front than a lot of the other green complexes are, I guess, is what I'm trying to say there. But yeah, once you do, I mean, again, the distance these guys hit it at, they can probably take 402-yard hole, a 3-wood, a 5-wood, and drop it between these 2 sets of bunkers. I could be wrong about that, but I would assume that that's probably safe. And if you play even the slightest fade with the driver, you're also safe, because those green side bunkers up on the right side are real far away. And you'll leave yourself a pretty good wedge in. This was the 5th easiest hole in 2018 for that reason. It is, like I said, a little bit of an uphill tee shot, but if you get that depth perception proper, it's not a hard hole at all. But I do like it because it actually seems achievable. Maybe that's part of why I like it, is because I think I might be able to actually play it and not shoot a 40. But yeah, no, it's a good standard golf hole. I feel like this was one where I could see this being at most golf courses I play. I think the one thing that's really different about this, you keep looking at these pictures, and anywhere you expect to see like a bunker, you see 4 little bunkers, and I'm interested to see how that plays out during the week, because when I think about it, like what the differences are there, I guess you can get a lot more lip trouble, right, with smaller bunkers. Obviously, it's not a huge deal on a hole like this where your approach isn't very long, but maybe on those 455, 457-yard par 4s that we talked about, and some of the longer ones later in the course too, it can make it more difficult for you to be able to get out of them cleanly without lip trouble, just because the bunkers are so small. And again, the bunkers are all sunken. These aren't like raised bunkers. They are very much like sunken bunkers into the ground. They are below your feet. The balls can trickle in, although they're surrounded by rough. They're not like true fairway bunkers that, have the shortcut grass running in. But that being said, it's a good hole. It's one that these guys certainly should be able to birdie. But yeah, did I miss anything here? I think I nailed that. I think I killed that one. But this, again, the bunkers on the right side of the green, you don't necessarily have them on the left, but the ones on the left side of the fairway are jutting up pretty close to the green there. So kind of plays the same role as having that skinny little funnel up into the green, although it's technically a little bit more open. But you're hitting wedge into that hole anyways. And this one is Shawnee. This is hole 7, and this is one that has the smallest opening to a green you've ever seen in your life. Once again, bunkers guarding the front right and I guess middle left. It's the way the hole angles. It's another dogleg right. So back-to-back doglegs right here. This one is kind of similar in shape to the previous hole, but very opposite of it in terms that it lacks entirely fairway bunkers. There's another one where there's 3 fairway bunkers like right at the start of the fairway, which I really don't understand the point of those. They see like nobody's going to be in them all day or all tournament, all PGA Championship. I don't entirely know their purpose. It feels like a waste of sand a little bit to me, but that's, an aside. But in terms of shape, it's very similar. It's a slight dogleg right, a little bit longer. This one's 431. And the tee shot is blind this time. It's more blind than the first one. This is a fun hole, though. I do like this one because if you look at the tee shot, it kind of goes up and crests this hill, and then it goes down. You can't see the downhill. You're carrying it over that downhill into this part of the fairway, but you can't see it at all. And this is one of the ones that the farther down you go, the more cambered it is. It's actually very similar to what we were talking about on, I believe, the second hole that banks left and has that fairway running away to the right. This one banks right and has the fairway running away even to a harsher degree to the left there. So if you really try to push it down there, maybe that can play a bigger part and shove you into the left rough. But the left side is actually a decent angle into this pin or into this green. Sorry, the green kind of is tucked back away to the right. It's like, you crest over this hill, go down the hill a little bit, and then bank again to the right onto this weird little like an island's the wrong word, but the green is kind of raised up. It's another one of those things that you'll see a handful of times at Aronimink, kind of calling back to Donald Ross's Scottish roots, are these like kind of crownish greens that are it's raised up above the land a little bit, so it kind of almost feels like an island that you're playing to, which can make those approach shots a little bit more intimidating. And once again, like I said, you have those bunkers right and left of the green. This time only two on the right side, one longer one on the left side there. But again, no true fairway bunkers on this hole. Maybe the first time we've seen that, I don't know, this entire course. But this one is one of the few that actually has changed a little bit. They tucked a tee back. It's been lengthened 35 yards since 2018, but it won't change much. I think that's more to keep it the same, to be honest, just because of how far guys can hit it off the tee these days. The landing area will probably honestly play fairly similarly to what it did in 2018. And that gets us to Sitting Bull, which is hole number 8 here. And it is our second par 3 of this golf tournament. And yeah, it's a fairly standard one. It's long. It is fairly downhill. So it's 242 on the card. I would be surprised. I don't know how downhill it plays, probably 15 or 20 yards, probably closer to 15. So whatever, say it's 230 yards with slope there. But it can play a lot of different. It's a big old green. Again, like I said, that's kind of the trend you'll see on these par 3s. It's a huge green with pin positions that can make it really tricky if you miss on the wrong side of the green on any given day. There is a huge like fairway collection area that you sometimes see on par 3s out in front. And then once again, you see it tighten up with these bunkers left and right of the green and open back up into the full green there. Technically, this is the first water hazard on the course. This is one of the ones I was talking about that this doesn't really count as a water hazard. It's a skinny little piece of water that juts out into the in play, I guess. But to get it into that, you'd have to miss your number by 55 yards to get it into that green or get it into that water. Maybe 60, 70 yards even. It's not something that I'd be astonished if anybody during the PGA Championship finds themselves in that water unless they, I don't know, like just straight chunk it. It would be really, really hard to do. The runoff area, there's a rough collar there, so the rough will catch anything that if somehow rolls, but I don't think the fairway is going to be cut short enough for any of that to happen. I think that's why, I guess that's maybe I'm building my opinion of Aronimink as we go here. I have a little bit of one, but one of the things I would say is that some of these hazards, this kind of plays into that same thing I was talking about with the bunkers short on the fairway. The fairway bunkers playing like not even in play. So these hazards are almost a little bit like pointless. Like I guess it adds to the scenery, it adds to all that stuff. I get that, but in terms of having the water jet out there, like, I don't know why you wouldn't have the water jut up towards the front of that green. I understand it's a longer par 3. You might need to have guys hitting longer irons in. You might not want to force them to carry that much. But at the same time, even if you cut that, if you're looking on video, you can see what I'm talking about, that runoff area in half, I think that would be pretty additive to this hole just to add a little bit of risk. I mean, it was a hard hole in 2018, don't get me wrong. It was the most difficult one, actually, I believe, at 43 over par. I think a lot of that has to do more with pin positioning, though, and the fact that this green is so big and undulated that I don't think that has much to do with the penalty of this water. And obviously the bunkers short left and right on a long hole like that will be in play very, very aggressively as well. But I don't see the harm in pushing that water up a little bit more, making it more of a factor on this hole, because otherwise I think, you're relying on, I mean, I guess you do that for this whole course. So maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't be correcting Donald Ross, one of the greatest architects in golf history, but nonetheless, I think that water could play a little bit more of an interesting role here. But it's a good par 3, and that will start to take us towards our first par 5 here in a moment. There it is. The Kickapoo is a 605-yard par 5. It's a good par 5. I think there's nothing wrong with this hole. It's nothing crazy special, to be honest with you. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with it, like I said. It is a long uphill par 5, 605 yards. The first par 5 we've seen. Again, this is our 9th hole. We've gone 9 holes now without seeing a par 5. And it's a solid one. I don't know. I mean, again, it's a very, very similar structure, what you expect, what we've talked about with Aronimink. There's fairway bunkers that jut in left and then right and then left and then right. And then there's no bunkers really guarding the green. This was one where, it was clear that they wanted to make sure they could encourage players to run one up if they needed to. Obviously, 605 yards plays uphill. You're going to have a longer club in, even in modern golf. I mean, maybe it's, for these guys a 4-iron, but still, that's a long club, I guess, in some ways, and maybe it'll play longer than 605 on some days. So you could see some fairway metal or even a driver off the deck running up to that green. But in general, it's a fairly unguarded green. But yeah, it does play back up to the clubhouse, which I do like in par fives. The playing uphill is interesting. And this is really the only green we've seen that is entirely open in front. But in 2018 there was only 4 eagles here. It was the second easiest hole, but there's only 2 par fives on this course. So this is the hardest of 2 par fives, and there were only 4 eagles in all of 2018. I believe this was the BMW Championship, so I think it was 70 players per round, I believe, is what I saw. So whatever that multiplies that to, only 4 eagles is a very small portion of the amount of for a PGA Tour par 5, that has 70 golfers coming through on a given day. That is a very, very light amount of eagles, but it is a good birdie opportunity coming into the back 9. Obviously, I think the front 9 as a whole, and we can kind of pause after 9 here just to talk through what we saw. So we opened with those 4 par 4s going 434 yards, 413, 455, 457. I think the themes, throughout those first 2 holes, you get a little bit of a theme of the slanted fairways, but you don't see that much beyond that, to be honest. You see it on holes 1 and 2, and then it's either 6 or 7. I'd have to remember. It is, I believe, 7 that you see that slanted fairway again. Like the heavily slanted fairway, I believe, is on 7 there with that little island green. But that's a theme that you see a little bit early on. And then again, we talked about it a lot, but those small little bunkers that jut in and out of the fairway are kind of the main sticking point. And then again, elevated greens and runoff areas. You'll see on this par 5 on Kickapoo, there's a little runoff area there in the back. There is on previous holes, you'll get them, like I said, on hole 1, because the camber of the fairway, you're going to be inducing a draw a little bit with the ball above your feet, and there is that runoff area long left to kind of accommodate for that. So it is, I do like that they do that. I think that's always interesting, because it would be annoying, or it is annoying sometimes when courses force your hand and push you towards a shot without accommodating for the fact that you're going to have to hit that shot. It's similar to, again, I'm not trying to say Aronimink is Augusta, but when you're talking about cambered fairways, it's usually the first one that comes to mind. Talk about hole 10, right? Like on hole 10 at Augusta, you've got that really harsh slope on the fairway, but then there is that area left of the green that you can miss. Obviously, you're more penalized missing right, I guess, to that bunker maybe, but then there's a really steep fall off on the left side of the green at 10. So you do see some of those bones here as well at Aronimink. But we can move on to the back 9 here, I think. We can start it off with hole 10, which is Cherokee, a 472-yard par 4. This is a fairly interesting one. The approach shot is interesting. I think the drive is standard. It's slightly downhill, but it doesn't have much right to left camber or anything like that. It's pretty flat, and there's a bit of water. This is kind of, I think, the first actual water hazard, and this is the first hole with absolutely no bunkering up by the green. Instead, it's got a little pond short left. It just reminded me of a hole, and now I can't remember which hole it is, to be honest with you. But there's a little pond. The fairway is all straight away, and then the green kind of pushes over to the left and wraps around this pond a little bit. And so the pond is fairly in play on the second shot. You'd have to come up short. I imagine they'll tuck that pin up front a decent bit to kind of encourage that risk at least. Have you putting back down at that pin, at that water if you need to be. But obviously that water not in play on the tee shot. It's a 472-yard hole. So you will have, a low to mid iron in after tee shot, though it does play a little bit downhill. There is a lot, like I said, of undulation and runoff areas around this green. You can see there's a runoff area that kind of wraps around the entire right and back side of this green, which is kind of a trend you'll see with holes like this. Like whenever the green kind of cambers to the left there and pushes out around any obstacle, whether it be, marsh or water or whatever the hell you want it to be, whenever the green kind of pushes around like that, there usually is that banked right side that can kind of help feed balls down there or play as a runoff area if it's not quite as heavily banked. This did play as the second hardest hole in 2018, which I was a little bit surprised by, just because the drive isn't that difficult. And usually, when the drive isn't that difficult, these guys can handle the approach shot, and they're playing a lot smarter golf than I would be. So they're not really playing around with this water. They're kind of going typically back right, left of this. So I was surprised to see that this was the second hardest hole in 2018, but it is also one of the few holes that does have any, serious potential for like penalty strokes. I mean, a lot of the time with the bunkering and the native areas and stuff like that, you can have penalty, but it's really, hack out to the fairway, or in the case of the native area, sometimes you get a shot. It's just one of the few holes where if you do go in that water, obviously this is a real penalty. So I guess I can see how that could inspire to be one of the hardest holes. There weren't many, like none of these holes, by the way, when I say hardest hole, I think 5 of them played over par in 2018. Obviously, like I said, Keegan won at 20 under. He was in a playoff at 20 under with Justin Rose. There was guys at 19. There was guys at 18. I think Rory was at 18. So there's going to be a lot of birdies out there. There's going to be a lot more holes that play under par than over par. But that being said, this was one of the few that played over par, and it was the second hardest back in 2018 at the BMW Championship. It'll be interesting too to see how things progress between the BMW Championship and now. How different things play, how different the holes play. Obviously, a couple of them have been slightly lengthened, but not by much. But we can go on to hole 11 here. Kiawea, I think. This is a 425-yard par 4, kind of similar to what we've seen. I do like this green complex. I think this is pretty fun. It is a huge green. If you're watching, you can see that it's basically a circle green with runoff area around, 85% of the circumference of the green. And there's a lot of bunkering around it too. There's 3 bunkers behind the green, directly behind the green. There's 4 short right of the green. There's 3 short left of the green. There's a little bit of runoff area beyond the bunkers short right of the green. There's native area to the right and long of the green. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think the one downside of that is that most of these guys are going to have a wedge in hand. I think it's a 425-yard hole. We're coming off hole 10 that had very little bunkering, and now we've moved on. Like I said, hole 10 was the first one where we had no bunkers around the green. And I just told you we have 1, 2, 3. We have 10 bunkers around the green here. There are more than 20 bunkers on this hole. I think that's the most of any on this course. I would assume so. I can't imagine having more than 25 bunkers on a hole, whatever this is. It's a downhill tee shot, and then the approach goes slightly back uphill there to the green. Like I said, I love this green complex. I wish we were forcing guys to hit 6-iron, 7-iron into this green complex instead of having them hit a pitching wedge or a 50-degree wedge into this green complex, because it takes a lot of the risk of runoff there. Like I will say, it is similar to other PGA Tour courses you'll see with some of these bigger greens, where the greens are in practice a lot smaller, just because so much of the green is actually just run off into a separate area, and not at all anything that'll hold, right? Like it's not real. It's on the green, obviously, but if you drop the ball on that spot on the green, it would roll into these runoff areas. So the greens are smaller in practice than they look. But that being said, these guys are so good. Like PGA Tour professionals are so good with wedges in their hand, with pitching wedges in their hand, with short irons in their hand, that I wish a green complex as fun as this one was positioned on a hole that was 480 yards or 490 yards or even 500 yards. So that being said, not at all one of my least favorite holes on the course. And the approach here with those bunkers, there's a really steep runoff on the front there. It's funny, like I said, this hole is one of the ones that is fairly flat. It plays slightly downhill and then flat, but there is enough undulation on that front of the green that it can roll back off, as much as 40 yards into the fairway if you land on the front and spin it. Or I guess that is the one benefit of forcing wedges into their hand, is that it's going to add a lot of spin. And if these guys can't control it, it will be ripping back off the front of that green. This was the 9th hardest hole in 2018. It was like right in the middle, which means it played, a handful under par, nothing crazy. But a good hole. Again, these, I don't think we've hit. There's a couple holes that stand out to me. I really like 7 so far. Just a status check. I really like 7. I think honestly, 2 and 7 are two of my favorite holes, which is unfortunate in the fact that it's showing you what I like because they're pretty much the same hole, just going different directions. They're dog legs with the fairways slanting away from the dog leg and forcing you into the rough if you don't play the proper shot shape. I like that challenge. I think that's good. Um, and a good downhill, the long par three is a good one too with that huge green. Again, I would probably want to see a little bit more water involvement there, but nonetheless, it's a good hole. Um, but with all that being said, we're only through 11. We can move on to number 12 here and see if there are any other holes that stand out as among my favorites. This again, I feel like we've seen this hole 4 times, to be honest with you, which is maybe not the greatest point of advocacy for Aronimink. I think it'll be a great tournament. I think it'll be a lot of birdies, but this feels like a hole that we've seen 4 times. Correct me if I'm wrong, but again, short bunkers in the fairway on the left side jutting into the fairway. Then we've got a set of bunkers jutting into the fairway on the right, another set of bunkers jutting into the fairway on the right, like 40 yards further, a set of bunkers jutting into the fairway on the left, and then we've got a greenside bunker guarding the right side of the green. It really does it. Like, I think the point here, right, is with these bunkers is to force you into a certain layup zone or to force you to either take on the bunkers and get aggressive or just like fall back into this, kind of easier zone that'll make you a little bit of a longer shot in. But I think with the abilities that these guys have, the talent that these guys have, forcing them into these like areas is not that much of a penalty, A, and B, they don't care. Like, if there's not a water hazard up here, I know there's native area, so I guess that'll depend hole by hole. There is a little native area up on here on the right side of hole 12, but if they can just bomb it down there without consequence, I think they're going to take that opportunity. And a lot of these fairways are fairly open to that. And again, guys like Rory McIlroy, Cam Young, they're not bombing it down there like without any aim. These guys, like, it's all very accurate stuff as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays. I hope I'm wrong a little bit, but these holes, a lot of these par fours that are around 430 to 475 yards feel pretty repetitive to me. We'll see how that manifests next week. Maybe these bunkers are much more in play than I think, and I'm giving the PGA Tour professionals too much credit in how they're going to approach these par fours. But to me, they seem fairly consistent in what they ask. And we're going to go on to hole 13 here, which is not that much different, to be honest with you. This is another one. I think this is the one. It's a little bit shorter, to be fair. But again, the one thing I will say about this hole is they did introduce a tee box that can make this drivable, which I think will be interesting. It was not drivable in 2018. It actually played as the 13th hardest hole. Again, that's not hard, but it was not, one of the most birdied holes on the course that year. But they did introduce a piece of a tee box up front that can make this drivable, which will be interesting. It's another one with a really skinny entrance to the green, bunkers guarding the front right and middle left. So it will require a ton of accuracy if guys go for it. On the days that it's not drivable, though, it will be one of those that it'll be a birdie hole, no question. It'll be a driver and then a flip wedge. The one thing about making it drivable is they're also, and this is actually could be in play when it's not technically drivable as well, just considering how long these guys hit it. There is an OB left here. It looks like it's like work zone, like a cart shed or whatever, like a work zone on a golf course that's OB. But this is the one that made me think about how much I am a little bit annoyed by these bunkers that are just barely in the fairway here. Like right at the start of the fairway, there are 3 bunkers on the left, 3 bunkers on the right that narrow the fairway to, it must be about 15, 20 yards there at most. But nobody's landing there. It doesn't matter. I truly don't really get a good grasp of why there's 6 bunkers at the front of this fairway that are not at all in play to anybody who's playing this golf course, whether that be professionals or not. I don't really understand the entire point of that. But yeah, then there are bunkers that jut out into the fairway there. 4 bunkers around halfway down the hole, or halfway down the fairway, I should say. So those could be in play, but I do think that most of the guys on the PGA Tour are probably able to avoid those with a driver, maybe play out a little bit to the right side. We'll see. Again, I don't have the exact yardages here from the professional tee box, so I'm not sure if those are going to be like in landing zone for guys like Rory can almost certainly blow the ball over him, but for the average guy on the PGA Tour, maybe even slightly above average, the Matt Fitzpatricks, the Xander Schauffele's, et cetera, are they going to find themselves having to flirt with these bunkers on a regular day? Or are they going to be able to blast it over it too? I think that'll be interesting to see. Either way, this is going to be a birdie hole. I would expect this, among obviously the two par fives will be the two, most scoreable holes that we'll see at the PGA Championship. But I would not be particularly surprised. Obviously, this is not a hot take if a drivable par four is up there as well as one of the most scoreable holes. But that being said, we can get to 14. I do like this par three. It's a 216-yard par three, fairly similar to the other ones we've seen. Huge green, plays slightly downhill. Another one, I think I wrote this same bullet point for every single par three, maybe, that it's a huge green that if you're not in the right spot, like if you stay on the green but miss it 50, 60 feet, it's going to be a tough two-putt. There's a lot of undulation in these greens. So it won't play easy. I'm curious to see how fast they're running these greens. I think if they run them really fast, these par threes, and a lot of these greens, honestly, because it's not just the par three greens that are undulated, and obviously the runoff areas will introduce some interesting chips as well. But I'm curious to see how fast they run them, because if the greens are running really fast, these par threes, these par fours, all this putting, long putts could become very, very difficult. These are some bigger greens. Again, they're bigger in visually than they are in practice, but still, there are some bigger greens. So I'm curious to see how that all works out. This was the sixth hardest hole in 2018, a 216-yard par three. Obviously, par threes tend to play harder, especially the longer ones. Pretty well defended. Same thing we talked about. There's actually the same thing we talked about on a lot of this, because there's two bunkers short of this weird fairway that are probably 80 yards short of the green. I don't know why they're there, to be honest with you. I don't get the point of that. This is a real personal vendetta, I guess, against bunkers that aren't in play. I mean, again, it feels like a waste of sand, but who am I? Who am I to complain about that, anyways? But it will be a good green. Again, I hope that the greens are running fairly quick, so that the putts matter here, so that we're not just lagging 50 footers up to an inch every time, because these guys are obviously so well tuned with their putters. But yeah, I think of the par three, I think probably number 8 is my favorite. 17 is good though. I should wait till we get to 17 to be ranking my par threes. That's no fun. Again, we're on to 15 here. Hate to say it, but it's a pretty straightaway par four. I wish I was. I mean, again, I feel like I've talked about this hole 4 times. I think the difference here is that we don't see much bunkering. There are 4 bunkers short of the fairway for some reason. Like we haven't even hit the fairway yet, and there are 4 bunkers there. I think to me, like, that kind of reminds me of, I guess maybe that reminds me of Scottish golf, but that feels like more natural sand. These feel like very manufactured bunkers that are just not in play. And I like, for anybody who's been in those bunkers, I'd be so curious to know how you got there and how pissed off were you when you topped the drive and ended up in a bunker. Again, this is a whole other conversation. I might need to have this with Kyle and Nick when we get on the phone on Monday, or on Tuesday or Wednesday, and really preview this PGA Championship. But it bothers me a little bit more than it probably should. But in terms of in the landing zone here, this is a 546-yard par four. This is a beast. This is a big one. They've lengthened this one a little bit since 2018. It played as the longest par four then as well, but now it is far and away the longest par four. I think is there another one over 500? No, there's 18, which is 490. I think that makes this the longest hole by 56 yards on the scorecard. Obviously, again, depends on pin placement, everything, tee box, whatever. On the scorecard, this is the longest par four by 56 yards, which is pretty substantial. This is kind of the one where you're going to see longer irons in. And the next hole is a par 5 that's 555 yards. So we go from 546 par 4 to 555 par 5. Feels a little counterintuitive again. I don't know why you would do both of those things, but whatever. Anyways, ideally you're playing the ball out to the right side of this fairway. It's another one that is a slightly sloped fairway that'll help encourage your play to the green. There's a little bit of a bank actually on the right side of the green. It's not a runoff area. That's like an elevated bank that'll kick back down onto the green. There are, once again, as we've seen, bunkers guarding the right and left side of the green up in the front there. But all in all, pretty straightaway par four. I think the catch here is that this one's really long, as you can see, 546 yards. It is one of the biggest greens on the property. I think that's encouraged. I meant to encourage like different approach shots. I think they had that in their little blurb that they wanted to encourage the opportunity to play some different types of shots into this hole, which obviously you kind of need on a 546-yard par four, just because of the different distances that guys will be coming in from. It was the fifth hardest hole in 2018. I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar just because of the length. You won't see that many birdies. I also don't think you're going to see that many bogeys, to be honest. I don't think this hole presents a ton of challenge. I will say there's trees lining the right side, so if you miss badly on the right, you will be blocked out. I think that's kind of one of the penalties here. And that's something I should say that I kind of have been omitting a little bit. There are trees scattered along the sides of these fairways in a lot of places, so it's worth noting that, you miss by a decent margin, you are possibly going to end up blocked out. But, that's kind of the case at all PGA Tour events, and these guys still manage to punch it up there, finesse a shot to 50 yards, and get up and down for par, which is something I would love to do myself, but have not quite mastered that talent yet. But we can jump to 16 here, which is the second and last par five. CU, 555 yards. Like I said, only 9 yards longer on the scorecard than hole 15. I know it'll play different. Don't get mad at me. I know it'll play different lengths, depending on the tee box, depending on the pin placement, everything like that. I get that. But nonetheless, it's almost similar to what I was talking about with holes 3 and 4, where it's like, I don't mind either of those holes. I just don't like putting them back to back. Hole 15 and 16, I don't mind either of these holes. I just don't love putting them back to back. Although I will say these have different feels. Like holes 3 and 4 feel similar. These two, holes 15 and 16, feel different. Obviously, the par 5 helps, but the bunkering, it's a different structured hole. So I shouldn't complain quite as much as I am. But this is the gettable hole. It was the easiest hole in 2018 by a good margin, even above the other par 5, obviously, which is way longer. Another one where there is that runoff area long and left. And this green complex kind of does it does kind of push you towards a big hook a little bit, or a big draw into this green. It is a short green, so I will say guys like Rory, who can hit their long irons really high, will have a big advantage on a hole like this where, you're approaching. Well, first of all, he's going to be approaching from 200 with a 6 iron, so that helps, or a 7 iron. But even other guys, if you're approaching with a 5 iron, but you're able to loft that 5 iron really high and land it fairly soft, that'll be a huge benefit here, just because, again, it is not that long a green. So a lot of balls that land on this green will be in that back or left runoff area. There is a native area farther left, so you get a little greedy, try to hit too big of a hook or something in there, and you find yourself in that native area. That can be a tough up and down for birdie, and you can find yourself struggling for par. But that being said, it's a par 5, 555 yards on the card. It's just going to be a hole that gets eaten alive by PGA Tour professionals. It does. Again, it's a shorter par 5, so you don't really need the run-up area for players to run like fairway woods or drivers up there to the green. But it is well guarded anyways, so you wouldn't have that opportunity regardless. Once again, there are 4 different sets of fairway bunkers that jut into the fairway. It's something I've said 900 times today. Won't be the last time I say it, I don't think either. I think we'll talk a little bit about that on 18 maybe, but maybe part in when I wrap this thing up as we get through, which I should start moving towards that. But hole 16 is a good hole. I think the good thing about a short par 5 on 16 is we start to get to the dramatic finish of things, right? Like we start to want birdies to be available. We want this to be an easier hole. We want to see big swings in play. You can see an eagle on this hole. You can maybe see a bogey if you find your way into that native area, but you can see an eagle. You can see pars. You can see decent swings on this hole. So I will say that is a benefit. Same with hole 15. The long par 4, that's 546 yards. Like, yes, it is very hard, and there's not as much to it as maybe I'd like from a long par 4 like that. But at the same time, it does encourage big swings. And we kind of see that as we get to hole 17 in a moment as well, because hole 17 is the last par 3 that we have, and really the only water hazard that we have. It is water short left of the green and short in general. But, if you're going at the center of the green, you're unlikely to hit that water. But it is short left. And I imagine, on Sunday or Saturday, we will see that pin tucked into that spot. Again, encourages a draw. And once again, you see that runoff area in the back left of the green to kind of accommodate for that. I'm curious to see where they put the pins. I would expect this to be one of those greens that you kind of play the four corners. So you're going to have front left, back right, back front right. Front right, you've got 3 bunkers there kind of guarding that spot. So if you play into there, you might get short-sided with a bunker. Back left is kind of the safest one, or sorry, back right is kind of the safest shot just because with the angle the green's at, that's straight through it. So you're just going to be hitting a longer iron. It already is 229 on the card. It would probably play around 245 back there, depending on what tee box they put you on. So that would give you a lot of landing area without having to really think too much about the water, at least for these guys. But I imagine on Saturday and Sunday, we will see pins tucked up on the left side there, which could induce some play. I mean, there's a very, very thin amount of rough guarding that water, but if you roll off the front left of that green, it'll be tough. I would imagine that's built in order to get a lot of balls to fall into that water down the stretch. Again, we're kind of encouraging drama here as we get to the end of the PGA Championship. 15, 16, 17 is a good string of holes to bring about a lot of big swings potentially. Especially considering the scoring that we're going to see in general. I think we've seen it. What was it at Valhalla a couple of years ago? We saw really low scores. I think Schauffele won that. Was it past 20 under? Or was it just 20 under? I know it started with a 2. So I think we'll see some low scores again. Keegan won this at 20 under in 2018 in a playoff with Justin Rose. So I would not at all be surprised if we see some low numbers and a lot of birdies flying around. So as we come down this stretch at the end, you might see a birdie, but this is one of the few holes that you can really see a big swing in terms of a big number made here with this water in play. Again, obviously somebody playing with the lead is unlikely to really attack a left pin there, but you never know. You never know what can happen as you come down the stretch at courses like this with stakes as high as a major championship. You can argue all you want about the quality of PGA Championship against other majors, but it is what it is. And this was the 4th hardest hole in 2018. And just considering it's a par 3, a decently long par 3 with water involved, like I would expect that to hold fairly true in 2026 as well. And we are on to our final hole here, aptly titled Aronimink. It feels selfish to name the last hole after yourself, but I get it. This is a 490-yard par 4, like we said, the 2nd longest on the entire course. Another one that kind of doglegs right. I do like this hole. This one might be one of my favorite holes on the course, which I'm glad that it ends like this. I think the green is pretty standard for what we've seen. It's a little bit more open front. Again, the longer the hole, the more open the front of the green, I think, is a general rule of thumb, especially on this Donald Ross course that you'll see. There are some bunkers right and left of it, but they're not really pinching in too much. There is one set of fairway bunkers that is kind of in the landing area there, 3 bunkers jutting in on the right side, but that kind of works out because you want to be playing up the left here with the way the fairway goes, and there is a tree kind of tucked halfway down the fairway on the right side that if you play out to the right, you could get blocked out by that. So the ideal tee shot here plays up the left side of the fairway a little bit to get a better angle into that pin away from those fairway bunkers anyway. But yeah, then there's the 5 bunkers that, quasi defend the approach, two greenside bunkers and 3 bunkers just short of it. And this was the 3rd hardest hole at the BMW. So again, if you look at, I believe we had, hole 13 will be a drivable par 4 on at least one day. I don't know if they'll do that on Sunday, but it's a short par 4. We can see birdies there. You have hole 14. That's the long par 3. You can definitely see some changes there, some swings. But then 15, 16, 17, 18, you could see a lot of ups and downs. Again, 15, that really long par 4, 16, that gettable par 5. They kind of play similar lengths, but the scoring could really change on those 2 holes. And then obviously 17 is the par 3 with a bunch of water. And 18 is this 490-yard par 4 to finish things out. And again, I believe when Keegan and Justin Rose ended up in that playoff, they actually were both at 21 under and bogeyed this hole to both enter the playoffs. I think Keegan missed like a 4-foot putt to get into that playoff with Justin Rose, which maybe tells you something about the greens. Maybe the putting will not at all be an easy thing this week. We'll do our full preview on Wednesday to really dive into, what brings about success on this golf course, stuff like that. I just wanted to go hole by hole here and kind of, because it was a fun exercise for me, because to be honest, I don't know Aronimink very well, or I didn't. I feel like I know it pretty well now. I think my general takeaway is I'm excited for a PGA Championship. I'm curious to see where this falls in recent PGA Championship history. Just, like I was saying, in in the realm of that Valhalla stuff, where we saw those really low scores and people complained a lot about, this doesn't feel like a major championship venue. Feels like a birdie fest. I don't know if Aronimink is really going to differentiate from that mold. I think it might be a bit of a birdie fest. And like I was saying, as we went through this, again, this is from somebody who's never played the course. So take this with a grain of salt. A lot of those holes, just in terms of preview and structure, felt fairly similar. A lot of par fours that are fairly straight away. This is actually not one of them. I think this is one of the more unique holes on the course, but a lot of par fours that are fairly straight away, that have several stacked layers of bunkers jutting into the fairways, small bunkers, not big bunkers, and then 2 bunkers guarding the front right and front left of the green to cause these little narrow chutes into the front of it. So we'll see if that changes, if I'm wrong, if those don't play similarly. Hopefully they do. I will say one of the good things about Aronimink that I would expect is that we should probably see a little bit of drama. I mean, that's the good thing about Birdie Fest, is that these guys are all so talented that it feels unlikely that anybody is going to absolutely run away with it when everybody on the PGA Tour can make a hell of a lot of birdies really, really fast. So we should be in for a good ending here. That is going to do it for the full 18-hole preview. I'll do a quick – I feel bad without Kyle here doing the whole next on the tee thing, but we might as well do it. Yeah, look, we got on Monday, we've got the tourney recap from the Truist. It's a really exciting tournament right now. Alex Fitzpatrick has the lead over Christopher Rayton. Cam Young chasing. Justin Thomas with a bad finish there, but still kind of chasing. Sung Jae Im's in that chasing pack as well. Tommy Fleetwood's in that chasing pack as well. So it'll be fun. I'm really excited to see if Alex Fitzpatrick can prove that he's legit. I mean, we've talked about it for the last 2 weeks, ever since he won on the DP World Tour and then won the Zurich. Obviously, the PGA Tour card is well deserved. I think we've talked a little bit about what we expect from him. Did not expect this. Did not expect him to be sleeping on a lead on Saturday at a signature event with Cam Young, his own brother, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Rory McIlroy in the field, world numbers 2, 3, 4 in the field there. And those 3 guys have really differentiated themselves. So we'll see if Alex Fitzpatrick can hold on, if Rayton will chase him down, or if Cam Young will chase them both down and win his second signature in a row, 3rd event of the year, Players, Cadillac, and Truist heading to the PGA Championship. I do love Cam Young at the PGA Championship, which has probably been documented too much, but I don't know if him winning the 2 events leading up to it makes me feel better or worse. But either way, anyways, like I said, Monday we have that tourney recap. Hopefully we should have something really exciting to talk about, whether it's a Cam Young chase down or a debut win for Chris Rayton or Alex Fitzpatrick, or something else happens, some more drama happens, whatever. And then on Wednesday, we will be coming at you again with that full PGA Champ preview. I think we actually might be pushing that to Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. That'll be out on our social media channels, whether or not we push that early. We want to make sure we get that out to people so that they can actually listen to it before the PGA Championship rolls around. So hopefully we get that out Wednesday morning at the latest, so that you have a day to pick that up and listen to it if you want. We will be doing our full pick, same kind of structure we did for the Masters, a little bit of a game there to make the most of a good week on the PGA Tour. So yeah, tune in for that. Other than that, always got the social medias. They're scrolling on the bottom of the screen if you've been watching on video. If you did watch on video, I hope you enjoyed some of those graphics we were working on. I had a lot of fun putting those together, looking through the history of Aronimink and everything like that. You can find us on Twitter, on X. You might be watching us on X already. I have no idea. At Center Cup Pod. On Instagram and TikTok, we're at centercup.pod. You might see a couple clips from this episode pop up on TikTok or Instagram in the next couple of days as well. If you ever want to email me, it's centercup.pod@yahoo.com. We do take constructive criticism. It's encouraged, actually. So please do reach out to us, suggestions, questions, whatever you want. If you guys want us to try to get more, interview content on the podcast, if you want us to, do some more content out on the golf course. Nick and I are going to be out playing pretty much every week, once a week. We're going to be trying to do some public golf course reviews, stuff like that around Chicago, which is where we're based. So if you guys have any suggestions for courses we should try out, anything like that, we are all ears. Any events you really want us to cover, we are happy to accommodate. So please do let us know. Reach out to that email again, centercup.pod@yahoo.com. It is scrolling across the bottom of the screen right there. But that'll do it. So thank you all for watching, tuning in, listening, however you enjoyed this podcast. I'm excited for the PGA Championship. So let's get right to it. And thanks for tuning in.